Freakazoid is one of my favorite cartoons of all time, and I'd eagerly love to revisit it for a pick of the week. You can send $50 to... Hey, it worked! We didn't deserve Freakazoid. Running for 24 glorious episodes from September 9th, 1995 to June 1st, 1997, Freakazoid was, in my opinion, the absolute pinnacle of Warner Animation's comedy team in the 90s. Ridiculously inventive and extremely funny, this was the reason to watch Kids WB during its first 2 seasons. And this request couldn't be more timely. Weigel Broadcasting and Warner Bros. Discovery just announced a new 24-hour classic cartoon channel on regular television, MeTV Toons, and Freakazoid is confirmed as part of the lineup. A confirmation that yes, in fact, you are old. So let's take a look at Freakazoid's second episode. The one where it became apparent that this was something truly special. Season 1 of Freakazoid uses the same sketch comedy style format as the original Animaniacs. This episode in particular consists of 2 long segments leading into a much shorter piece to wrap up the episodes. Those 2 extended segments, however, have pretty much become synonymous with the show. So let's take a look at all 3, starting with the first segment, Candlejack, written by Paul Rugg and directed by Scott Geralds. I'll get this out of the way. Summarizing a Freakazoid segment is sort of like summarizing a fever dream. This episode is presented in Scream-O-Vision, a product of Holland's vast tulip industry. Basically, the episode prompts viewers to scream their bloody heads off with probably the most bored-sounding announcer you can imagine.
Scream.
Good.
Anyway, the episode begins with Freakazoid helping out his girlfriend Steph, who is working as a camp counselor. The kids are telling scary stories, with Freakazoid telling the scariest story of them all.
The scariest thing in the world would be if they gave Sinbad another TV show.
But as they try to sleep in their cabins, 2 of the boys are telling each other about the legend of Candlejack, essentially the boogeyman who ties up and kidnaps kids if they dare speak the name Candlejack, which they have been, incessantly.
Uh-oh! Maybe he didn't hear it.
Hello, boys.
Scream.
And of course, kids being kids, they shout his name constantly. So soon the whole camp is taken by Candlejack. This absurd sequence is followed by a rebuttal by Dr. Guter Hunter Hanker, who himself gets taken hostage. Meanwhile, Freakazoid is with Cosgrove at the Honey Harvest Festival in Acton. Cosgrove, of course, has to remind Freakazoid to tend to the episode's plot at hand. Unfortunately, Freakazoid himself gets captured. But through the timeless storytelling of radio commentator Paul Harvey, the day is saved. So, Freakazoid's first episode, Dance of Doom, is a quirky and funny short. But when you get down to it, it's closer to a straight superhero comedy like The Tick. In fairness, they were probably trying to figure out how far in the comedy direction to go with this show. This is well known, but Freakazoid was originally going to be a straight-ahead superhero show with some light comedic overtones, and it was going to be run by Batman the Animated Series producer Bruce Timm. More and more, though, executive producer Steven Spielberg was pushing the show more towards the broad comedy of Animaniacs. Tim ended up leaving the project, eventually developing Superman for Kids WB, and responsibility for the show shifted to Tom Ruegger. Ruegger in turn installed Mitch Schauer, famous for Bobby's World and Garfield and Friends, as producer, and John McCann and Paul Rugg became the show's story editors. I had the privilege of speaking to Schauer via email, and this is what he had to say about the philosophy of Freakazoid. Just before I started on Freakazoid, it had been developed as a straight-ahead action-adventure series. Spielberg suggested making it a comedy, so Tom Ruegger and his core team of writers, Paul Rugg and John McCann, switched gears and went for laughs. As far as I know, the philosophy of Freakazoid was produced as irreverent and off-center comedy series as possible. And they did. More than any other episode, I would say Candlejack is the mission statement of Freakazoid. The one episode that illustrates just how beloved this show is, despite its untimely cancellation. Candlejack has all the hallmarks of a Freakazoid segment. Bizarre non sequiturs, self-referential humor, completely random cameo appearances,
I think there's a thumbtack under my fanny.
weird gimmicks, live-action stock footage,
Loco brothers! Look who's here for you!
and the utter annihilation of the fourth wall. It's not just funny superhero, it's complete and utter insanity. A show that makes even the lunacy of Yakko, Wacko, and Dot look normal. And that is honestly why I love this show. It's complete mayhem from beginning to end. You literally never know what you are going to see. An episode where we cut away to Jack Valenti explaining the motion picture rating system. An extended sequence where Freakazoid, Wacko, and the Brain argue over who Steven Spielberg's favorite is. The introduction of the words toyetic and hugbees into the vocabulary of millions of children. Yes, I wrote that because I needed to get hugbees into this script. Also, did you know that Freakazoid's erstwhile announcer, Joe Leahy, was the announcer on the promos for syndicated Simpsons reruns?
The Simpsons' adventure in fine dining
We have reason to believe you have eaten poison.
Poison!
turns into a situation that's hard to swallow.
You have 24 hours to live.
24 hours!
Well, 22. I'm sorry I kept you waiting so long.
Now Homer has one final day for his family.
Now come on, you're gonna learn how to shave. Now, some aftershave.
And to live it up,
Hey, Bird! Eat my shorts!
The Simpsons.
Tonight at 7, followed by Coach at 7:30 on Fox 29.
How toyetic can you get?
Toyetic is a word created by marketing people. It means an object or device featured in a cartoon that could easily become a mass-produced toy.
And that's something I didn't know until I was making this video. Small world. Our second segment doesn't even feature Freakazoid at all for reasons we'll get into. Instead, it's Toby Danger in Doomsday Bet. Written by Tom Mitten, storyboarded by Brian B. Chin and Butch Lukic, and directed by an uncredited Eric Radomski. This is WB's attempt at doing a legally distinct Johnny Quest send-up, several years before they actually owned the Johnny Quest IP, complete with Doug Wildey-inspired visuals, intentionally limited animation, and a jazzy score by the late Richard Stone that recalls the best of Hoyt Curtin. The world's largest semiconductor is sabotaged by the evil Dr. Sin, and breaks out of its laboratory and lumbers towards Las Vegas. It's up to Toby Danger, Sandra Danger, Dr. Vernon Danger, and Dasho Pepper to take down the semiconductor, which is dressed like a train conductor, before it destroys the last operating casino in Las Vegas. Well, okay. It's up to Dr. Danger, Dash, and Sandra to stop the semiconductor, because Toby Danger is a little shit who just wants to sneak into the casino to see the Kino girls. He gets arrested, and Sandra and Dash need to break him out. With Toby Danger freed, the foursome is able to take down Dr. Sin and the semiconductor. It's a simple plot, But what makes this short brilliant is two things. One is, of course, its limited animation. Warner's was pretty well known as a place that produced lavishly animated shows using the highest quality outsourced animation studios from all over the world. Gene McCurdy called it the Cadillac of TV animation, which is a pretty apt description. So this is WB animation intentionally playing against type. And there are some incredibly savage digs at limited animation in here. Karate chops that are stiff and unconvincing. Characters that don't move unless they absolutely positively have to. Those ubiquitous sound effects. Hanna-Barbera's animation didn't get this bad. This is actually closer to a parody of the limited animation found in the Spider-Man cartoon from the 60s, but the effect's still funny. But this isn't just a savage takedown, but actually a very loving tribute, and that probably gets us to Toby Danger's secret ingredient, the cast. Toby and Dashiell Pepper are played by Scott Menville and Granville Van Dusen, who were Johnny Quest and Ray Spannon in the 1986 revival of Johnny Quest. Even better, Dr. Danger is played by the great Don Messick in one of his very last performances. Messick was, of course, the second and most recognizable voice of Dr. Benton Quest. The only main actor who didn't return from the 1986 Johnny Quest was Rob Paulsen, and that's more because they replaced the admittedly problematic role of Haji with the safer role of Sandra Danger, Toby's teenage sister. Sandra herself resembles the earliest design for the character of Jessie from Johnny Quest and the Cyber Insects. But if they wanted to put Paulsen in there, they absolutely could have. Remember, he was the voice of Yakko Warner. Oh right, I forgot. This was originally supposed to be an Animaniacs cartoon. Tom Minton, a longtime writer at WB and the visual model for The Brain, had written the segment for Animaniacs and gave the script to Chin and Lukic to storyboard, but for whatever reason, the short didn't make it into the Animaniacs order. When Freakazoid became, Freakazoid, they commissioned the short to go into production, relying on talent from Batman to animate it. As Schauer explains, Toby Danger was brought into the series as a standalone segment. Eric Radomski and a crew from Batman were enlisted to put it together. We really wanted to do more episodes and a spin-off of Toby into his own series. Which tracks they did want to do more Toby Danger. As John McCann explained in the great Jim Corcus piece on Toby Danger at Cartoon Research, in 1997, I pitched Gene McCurdy on breaking out Toby Danger for its own series. Gene said the chances were remote because everything developed with Steven Spielberg, Animaniacs, etc. involved profit sharing and a host of complicated legal elements. Warner didn't see any point in bankrolling a show which they didn't totally own the property. It's a shame because Toby Danger as a series would have been a lot of fun, and there was potential in the concept of a Johnny Quest parody. As former Tick writer Christopher McCulloch, aka Jackson Public, would so ably demonstrate with his Adult Swim masterpiece, The Venture Brothers. And let's get this out of the way, this worked last time. Yes, I know Venture Brothers is not technically a kid show, but because of its Fox Kids connections, if somebody wants me to cover it, I'm not going to say no. You know the drill by now. $50 to paypal.me/HulkyD, includes your name, the episode you want me to review, and where I can find it. Now with that out of the way, our final segment is a bit of silliness called The Lobe, written by Tom Ruegger and directed by Scott Geralds. Despite the title card, this is just a short gag, barely 90 seconds, as the Lobe attempts a lobotomy of Freakazoid. This is essentially a showpiece for the Lobe, a marriage of perhaps one of the silliest villain designs you can make, and the rich baritone of the late David Warner. Warner, of course, so memorably voiced Ra's al Ghul on Batman. Ra's al Ghul, if you speak Christopher Nolan. He's brilliant here playing against type. And that's it. The second episode of Freakazoid is in the books. I can't be impartial here. This is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Every Saturday morning, I would turn on my local WB station, WB17 in Philadelphia, and lap this show up, laughing so hard I couldn't even breathe. And revisiting it for this project, it is every bit as good as I remember. This is easily the cream of the 4 Steven Spielberg collaborations with Warner Brothers, and I don't use that praise lightly. The visual jokes, the absurd humor, and the rapid-fire pace of the comedy puts this head and shoulders above everything else on Saturday morning at the time, including the excellent Animaniacs. I'd even go so far as to say it compares favorably with adult animated shows like The Simpsons. And yes, I know I sound crazy, but I stand by that. Like so many good things, Freakazoid didn't last. It couldn't. But it remains a beloved cult classic to the point where it was probably the most buzzed about part of the MeTV Tunes announcement. And this episode in particular gets probably the most fitting tribute Freakazoid can get. A meme. In fact, it spawned one of the earliest memes. Users on Twitter and other message boards would invoke Candlejack's name before the messages mysteriously became cut off, suggesting that Candlejack had indeed come for them, serving them right for disturbing an evil spirit. Everyone knows you do not say Candlejack out loud. Wait, I've been saying Candlejack out loud throughout this video, haven't I? Oh shit!
Moose,